One of my favorite things to do is brew up new decks, but coming up with a deck can also be very difficult. So in this guide, I will tell you the 3 main ways to design a commander deck. But before that, if you like my videos, consider subscribing. Thanks. Quick disclaimer, this video will not be how to build a commander deck. If you want to know how many lands to include or how much removal to pack, watch my video here. So there are 3 main ways to design a deck: top down, bottom up, and sideways. I'm going to start with sideways because it's honestly the simplest. This is what I call decks that are designed without gameplay in mind. For example, I recently saw a Ratatouille movie-themed deck at my local game store. The deck played rats and made food tokens and had other chef-related cards. Cards were included because they reminded the player of the movie, not because it was good in the deck. Another example is a buddy of mine made a metal band themed deck, where all the art and card names felt like they could be the names of songs, or the art could be on the album cover of some metal band. The deck spoke to him because he really likes metal music. And that's kind of all there is to it. For these types of decks, I only have one piece of advice. You're gonna lose a lot, and you need to be ready for that. Since you're adding cards for reasons other than synergy, your deck just lacks the power that a more synergistic build might have. Bonus points though, if you can make a deck based on a movie or book and actually have it function well. The next way to design a deck, and I think the most common way, is top down. This is where you pick a legendary creature and build your deck around it. This might seem very obvious to many players, since building around your commander is partly the point of the format. It could be a legend you cracked from a pack, or some legend you clicked on from EDHREC. Once you've selected your legend, the deck can oftentimes build itself, depending on the commander. If it's a tribal card, you want to add a lot of tribe members and tribal synergy cards. If your commander does things when you cast instants and sorceries, then you're going to want to fill your deck with a bunch of instants and sorceries. Top-down design has the benefit of giving you immediate structure to your deck. When designing a deck top-down, one thing to pay attention to is enablers versus payoffs. Let's compare a few Expel commanders. Rasheen gives you a ton of mana to enable you to cast X spells for a lot of mana, which is usually what you want to do, make X really big. Now let's compare that to Zaxara. This commander does not ramp you into X spells nearly as well, but when you do cast an X spell, you get extra benefits. Rasheen wants you to go all in on one big X spell, whereas Zaxara wants you to cast many X spells, so you might want a higher density in a Zaxara deck. And the most powerful commanders are often ones that are enablers and payoffs. Something like Mizzix of the Ismagus not only makes casting X spells easier by reducing the cost, but when you do cast a big X spell, it rewards you by giving you an experience counter that kind of feeds back into it. Just make sure if your commander is an enabler to have more payoffs in the 99, and if your commander is a payoff, have more enablers for that payoff in the 99. Top-down design might feel like the easy way to build a deck, and it sort of is. But there are a lot of traps that players can fall into, mostly playing cards that do nothing without the commander in play. Let's take Hinata Dawncrown as an example. This commander reduces the cost of your spells by 1 for each target. So people commonly play cards like Distorting Wake in their Hinata deck. This lets you bounce any amount of non-land permanents for just triple blue. These 2 cards in play make a very powerful combo. But what if Hinata is not in play? Well, Distorting Wake is pretty bad. Sorcery speed makes it kind of rough, and it's really not very mana efficient until you get to the 5 or 6 mark for X, especially since bouncing a creature is often a 1 mana ability. This is why Distorting Wake shows up in less than 1% of decks on EDHREC. It's just not very powerful. So without your commander, you're now stuck with a bad card in hand. Many times people who build around their commander end up with lots of bad cards that only work with their commander in play, and if their commander dies 3 or 4 times, suddenly their deck just kind of falls apart and does nothing. If only there was a better way to build your deck. I think bottom-up design is the best way to design a commander deck. This is what I do with basically all my commander decks, and it almost always makes my deck more consistent. So instead of starting with your commander, you start with a theme. This can be anything. It can be as simple as I want to play a white enchantment deck, or I want to make a goad forced combat deck. Once you have your theme, you want to find cards that you want to play in the deck. Let's use the goad theme as an example. You might go to Scryfall and scroll through all the cards that have the word goad. Let's say you like the cards Ghoulish Impetus, Slice Your Hired Muscle, and Taunt from the Rampart. Cool, we've decided on Mardu colors. Time to find a commander. Now sometimes finding the commander to fit your theme after you've come up with it can be relatively easy. If we were in mono red, you could just play Grenzo. But in Mardu, there are no legendary creatures that goad. So what now? Do we just bail on the deck? No, of course not. We can still find a commander that works here. We have a few options. You can go the just for the colors route, where you just play some commanders which provide card advantage or late game value, and use those. This is very easy to do with partners. So Tymna plus some other red partner, and you can just attack people to draw cards. Doesn't really matter what your theme is, drawing cards is almost always good. Or you could play a commander like Teriel, who is just a powerful late game card which will give you value as the game drags on. These are perfectly fine options for a Mardu goad deck, but it's often better to find a commander which is synergistic for your strategy. When there's not an obvious option though, this might require some thinking outside the box. So for Mardu goad, maybe you could do Queen Marchesa. Goad works well with the monarchy since it forces people to attack one another instead of you, allowing you to get extra value. This way you can keep the monarchy for longer and then also work a monarchy sub-theme into the deck. Or maybe you could play all the legendary creatures that goad or force combat, basically all the other commanders in these colors, and play Dahada, which will help you draw into a bunch of force combat oriented commanders. This approach has so many benefits. For starters, it usually makes your deck a little unique, since you need to think outside the box to find a commander. I don't think I've seen or heard of Dahada Oops All Goad Commanders deck. And because you built your deck from the theme first and found the commander last, it means your deck has a stronger foundation and probably works better by itself without the commander in play. Instead of being a commander that has 99 cards to support it, this is a deck that functions on its own and has a powerful synergy piece in the command zone you always have access to. Bottom-up design decks will generally have less non-games. You know, the ones where you play your commander, it dies, you play your commander, it gets countered, you play your commander, it gets board wiped, and then your deck does nothing anymore. I think less of those games means more fun overall, which is why I try to focus on making my decks designed bottom up so they function well enough without the commander. But that is just my opinion. If you disagree, as always, let me know in the comments below. And do you prefer a different way of designing commander decks? Or is there a fourth method you use that I didn't mention here? Also, do you like the new sprite work? I did a little redesign for the channel. If you do, check out my friend at Beevuu on Twitter or Instagram. They make lots of awesome artwork, and feel free to DM about commissions if you want some art for yourself. Links, as always, are in the description. Thank you so very much for watching. Subscribe for more.